when it comes to basing, scale is a problem. You've got a model which is supposed to be something really big, and you've shrunk it down until it's teeny tiny. But the material you're using for it, sand, is already teeny tiny. So if you want to replicate an actual desert that's made of sand, you need to do something else. For example, if you put a Space Marine onto a base with sand and then you scale him back up to his full 7.5, 8 feet tall, the base scales with him, the sand scales with him, and it becomes boulders. So you need something that looks smaller. So that's exactly what we're going to do now. So these are resin blanks. They're a few millimeters thick, and all you want is something that can be baked in an oven reliably. So thick piece of pre-dried wood, a piece of metal, resin, just nothing that's going to melt. So you don't want plastic or anything like that. Resin is absolutely fine. Happen to have these blanks just knocking around, and I've drawn on the sizes of the bases, and in true Blue Peter fashion, here's one I made earlier. So I've got two of these for the one for square bases and one for circular bases. We're going to be using Sculpting Soufflé. Now this is a oven bake polymer clay. Now the reason I use the soufflé version is because it's much easier to work with. A lot of polymer clays you have to work and soften them and knead them quite a lot before you can actually sculpt with them, and I find that to be quite annoying. So the soufflé one, you can just pick it up, give it a few swishes, and it is good to go. So the sizes that I've marked out on the blank are to the outer edge of each base. You can do it exactly if you want to the actual top of the base. It doesn't really matter. This way just gives me a little bit of leeway if I don't go all the way to the edge with the soufflé. So what you want to do is you just squish it onto your blank and sculpt your base. So if we're doing desert bases, if you look at some reference, you want to do almost like a wave pattern to start with. And I'll be using this is a wax or dental carving tool, dental sculpting tool. Really cheap to pick up. You can grab these anywhere, really, any online. Amazon do loads of them. Hobbycraft will probably do some as well. You can buy packs of them, sculpting tools. And we just want to mark out a basic sort of wave shape. The more you look at the reference, the sort of more idea you'll get of what looks like a sandy desert. So keep refining the base until you've got something which resembles your reference, purely in the shape and how it looks, something like that. And then you want a toothbrush. I've used an electric toothbrush here that's just a little bit faster. Just make sure you don't get one of those ones that oscillate, that spin round, because then that won't work. This is just one that's really cheap. It's about £5 and just vibrates slightly. And then you just make sand-like marks using the toothbrush in your base. Once you're done, you should have something that looks similar to this. Now, the really good thing about polymer clay is that it holds its shape exceptionally well. So if you want to have, say, a figure or a piece of scenery that is in plastic and that will melt when it's baked, but you still want to have it in the base or on the base, you can at this point press it into the base and then take it off, and that will leave an impression in the polymer clay which will stay there once you've baked it, which is fantastic. So if you have a skeleton or something, you can pop his feet down, press him into the base, and you've got two perfect foot impressions for him to stand in once that base is baked and cured. That's the base all baked, and that is now nice and hard. Follow the instructions on the packet of polymer clay. It all depends on the thickness of it as to how long you bake it, but depending on the material you used for the blank, it should just slide straight off. It should just pop straight off. Now you just glue it to your base with a bit of super glue, trim off the edges, and then what you can do is you can either fill the sides if there's any gaps or anything, just sand it just to tidy it up a little bit. I didn't bother too much with this one. This one's a bit of a test, just a sort of example to show everybody and to show you. But it's worth taking a bit of time to make it a little bit better if you want something for perhaps a display miniature. If you pressed any bits of scenery into the polymer clay, now is the time to glue them back in. Obviously, if you made foot impressions for a miniature, don't put him on just yet. I'd advise painting him first. But as you can see here, the impression is still hasn't warped or shrunk or anything, and that skull just fitted straight in. So now we'll get on to the painting. Now we'll use the square base as an example first. This is quite a basic sort of desert scheme. So we're starting with a base coat of Xandri dust. And what we'll do is we'll just give it a few dry brushes, a little bit of a wash, and then and that will be mostly it. So it's quite simple. So Morghast bone, quick dry brush over the top, and then we'll use Ushabti bone, and then if you do a few dot highlights of Screaming Skull if you want to. I mean, this all depends on the style of sand that you want. Some sand can be quite red, some sand is sort of orangey, yellowy colours. So I've gone straight in with Seraphim Sepia, which gives it a nice warm tone. You could thin this a bit more. It's probably a little bit too dark, but it brings out the textures that you put in. The rock is a fairly basic rock recipe as well, which is a base coat of Eshin Grey, and then we highlight it up using Dawnstone and Administratum Grey with a wash of, I think, Agrax Earthshade afterwards. So the rock was obviously sculpted in with the souffle, Sculpey. So it's quite handy being able to do simple things like that into the base itself. Obviously, if you have any rocks and pebbles, you can just push them into the clay and bake it. If they're actual rocks, they'll be fine. But you may find you have to glue them back in afterwards. Just going in with a little bit of pallid witch flesh there, just to give a slightly brighter highlight on the edge. And this is a glaze of, I believe, rat skin, mix of rat skin flesh and squig orange. It's just a very, very thin glaze, just to add a little bit more orangey warmth to the base. And then you just edge the whole thing. You can either paint the sides where the polymer clay is, or you can do the whole thing in black like I've done. It doesn't look too bad. I'll put some pictures up towards the end. For the circular one, we'll do something slightly different. We'll just give it a base coat of XV88 or any kind of mid-brown colour. So it's a nice warm brown, this one. And then we won't do anything else to it. We'll just wash it with a mix of a weathering powder. I've used a medium rust tone here for some quite sort of nice, sort of orangey, reddy colours. If you could use a sort of dust desert weathering powder as well, that would look quite nice over a light one over a dark base, so it flows into the cracks and crevices and things. That would look quite good. But weathering powder, that's all you need to do, because of its very nature, it'll look dusty. You don't really need to touch it too much with anything else, really. If you want to see how I painted the skull, I did put up a short video, literally one of the shorts earlier, so have a look on there on the shorts shelf, and there should be a video about painting the skull. There we go, that's all dried on that one. Bit more subtle, but arguably slightly more realistic. You can, once it's dry, rub some of the weathering powders off the top surfaces if you want to, and you can just with a dab of water adjust it however you see fit. Obviously, if you have weathering powders on the feet of your model as well, that'll tie the model to the base quite nicely. And again, just edge the whole thing in black. There we go. Better photographs make it look a lot better. So it depends which sort of style you want to go for.